This is the Transforming Anxiety Podcast with Kelly Hanlon McCormick, and today is episode number 193, The Quality of Your Thinking. Welcome to Transforming Anxiety. I'm your host, Kelly McCormick. I'm a mom to 2 boys, a wife, friend, daughter, and sister, and I'm a certified life coach, yoga teacher, and soon-to-be mindfulness meditation teacher. I'm no stranger to anxiety, and I'm here to teach you how to manage your mind and your emotions so that you too can transform anxiety into calm, peace, and whatever you want for your life. I'm so glad you're here. Hey there. Welcome in today. Okay, I have something pretty good for you today. I'm kind of excited about this one, so we're just going to hop right into it. Today we're going to explore thinking, but in a new way. We're going to talk about the quality of your thinking. And this isn't about whether you have good thinking or bad thinking, right? This is not about quality in a sense of like high quality or low quality. It's not about fancy thinking or like cheap thinking, okay? It's about the content, the focus. What is the substance of your thinking? That's what we're going to take a look at today. Because in working with hundreds of clients over the years and having them share daily thought inventories, where they simply take note of what's on their mind and what they're thinking about, I've noticed a few things, a few patterns. And in digging in with thought work, with mindfulness, with some Buddhist psychology and meditation, it seems these are pretty human tendencies. This is just where our minds go. So I wanted to point out what I've seen and what I've read as I've researched this. And my hope is that in highlighting where our minds go, the quality of our thinking as humans, that you can reflect on your own mind and pick up on the quality of your thinking specifically. What are your go-tos? What does your mind return to? Are these qualities you want in your mind? Or do you want to start directing your mind differently? All right, so let's get into it. One of the first things that I see with new students is that when I ask for a thought inventory, which, a thought inventory is where you just put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, whichever, and you write down whatever crosses your mind. So it could be about an email you forgot to send, something silly you said yesterday, plans you have for this weekend, what your boss meant when she stopped by. It could be anything. This is purely uncensored, stream of conscious kind of stuff. And when you do this for a few days consistently, and then even for a few weeks, you start to notice some patterns. You start seeing where your mind regularly travels. You start uncovering the things that are your things. When you're able to look at your thoughts written down, instead of just having them ping-ponging around in your mind, you can look for things like planning thoughts. This is one of the most common qualities that I see in thinking, is that our minds are basically ticker tapes of to-do lists. Don't forget this, email that, organize this, call so-and-so, right? There isn't really any you in there. It's just like a bulleted list of things you're going to do and things you're going to check off so that you can do more things. Planning thoughts are interesting because we've come to identify ourselves so strongly with productivity, with what we can get done, with what we can accomplish during the day to what? To prove our worth? To be valid? What are we doing all of this stuff for? When our minds are consumed by planning thoughts, we lose ourselves. There's no you in there because the focus becomes more what you can do than who you are, right? It's doing over being. It's going over connecting. It's producing instead of loving. You see what I mean? But our society loves productivity. So it's a trap that we all have our leg in, at least to some extent. We're all doing this planning thinking. So it's worthwhile to check in and see, is this where my mind mostly spins? Is this where I spend a large chunk of energy and effort and time? Is my headspace mostly consumed with planning? Now, one last note on planning, and that is planning to some extent is a control thing, right? We're looking to guarantee a future for ourselves, to create some certainty. And obviously, we like the idea of control, of certainty, of knowing what's coming our way. We think if we plan things, right, we can create that for ourselves. And listen, COVID showed us just how false those notions are. We aren't in nearly as much control as we'd like to think, but we lull ourselves into a sense of control by planning. So it's habitual thinking for sure, but it's also a way of tricking ourselves into believing that we've got it all taken care of. So I just wanted to link planning thinking, that quality of thinking, back into the how and why we would do that. All right. Okay, next up is creative thinking. This is another kind of thinking that our minds can go to. So think it like if you're working on a house project, if you're working maybe on a work deadline, right, creating a presentation or something, if you're doing something that we typically think of as creative, something like writing or music or art, if you're building a business, or maybe more globally, if you're creating the life you want for yourself. This is another quality of thinking that our mind tends to go to, and that's creativity. So creative thinking is when you're cultivating something, when you're changing or shifting or transforming, when you're making something that wasn't there before. So it's a different kind of thinking. It has a different feel to it, a different quality, right, than planning thinking. You see what I mean? It's like this other level of your mind to think creatively versus, for example, to think in a planning way. So there's other qualities, right? There's things like thoughts that are in the family of anxious or worried or stressed. This is another quality of thinking. When people classify themselves as either anxious or talk about themselves as if they're worriers or believe themselves to be chronically stressed out, these are really common flavors of thinking. And something I see a lot is that people who tend towards this quality of thinking, doesn't really matter what they're thinking about. Like they'll make it so they think anxious thoughts or worried thoughts or stressful thoughts. I remember, and listen, I won't name names here, but let's just say that someone in my family who has a very easy time of things, a pretty damn good life, this person was getting worked up because they had a busy Saturday of appointments. Now, mind you, these appointments were things like getting a massage, getting their nails done, meeting with a decorator, like totally luxurious stuff, right? In any walk of life. It was so incredibly ridiculous that they'd be thinking worried and anxious and stressed out thoughts about that kind of day. We can all kind of objectively probably agree on that, but the quality of their thinking tended that way, so that even when presented with a day of literal pampering, there was this day of worry and anxiety. That's what it had become. It was totally mind-boggling. But this is what not checking in with the quality of our thinking can do for us. It can steal even a relaxing massage, a fun time at the spa. It can steal that away from us and make it a completely anxiety-inducing experience. This is kind of dumb, right? But it's true. And if we're unaware of the quality of our thinking, we may miss it. All right, another quality of thinking is when we get super strategic or practical. And I bring this one up because this is different in the fact that it deals mostly in facts. It deals with data versus the typical like emotion-rich stories that we humans usually tell. So it's interesting to notice when we're gravitating towards super practical, tactical thinking versus maybe a more dramatic or more nuanced storytelling process in our minds. Now, this isn't to say strategy and practicalities aren't still full of ideas and opinions and stories. They for sure are. But they're more based in facts and data than our everyday, just regular thinking. So I wanted to note this kind of thinking as a separate quality of thinking. It's just interesting to get curious about it. Like, are there places in your life where you're really strategic? Others maybe where you're more dramatic, right? These are just good to note. If there are circumstances, if there are people, if there are events, etc., that turn you more towards strategy, more towards data, and others maybe that turn you more towards that emotion-rich storytelling. All right, so then there's playful and joyful thinking. These are places you go purely for fun. Like maybe you think this way about your dreams and goals. Maybe you think this way about your kids. Maybe you think this way about your work or your weekend activities. So just consider when, where, and maybe even how do you engage in playful and joyful thoughts? And maybe a better question is, do you engage in playful or joyful thinking at all? Or has this become totally lost and crowded out with other qualities of thinking like planning, like anxious thinking, like worrying? Is there room? Is there time for play and joy in your mind? What would you need to focus on to reintroduce or double down on more playful and joyful thinking? And how do you think you would feel if you let your mind tumble towards play and joy more than you do right now? Like, these are just interesting things to consider, right? Okay, so I want to pause here before we continue exploring the quality of your thinking to ask, why? Why are we doing this? What's up with this? Like, so what if you're becoming aware of the quality of the thoughts you're thinking? Here's the deal. The more aware you are that thoughts are thoughts, that they don't mean anything, that they aren't inherently true simply because you're thinking them, right? Thoughts are just thoughts. Then inquiring about the quality of your thoughts gives you another way to work with them, to reflect on them, to step back from that never-ending waterfall of thoughts and simply observe what's happening there. Maybe you're getting ready for a vacation or the holidays and you notice that the overarching quality of your thinking is leaning towards planning. You're really into planning thoughts because you feel like you need to plan the holidays. Yeah? Maybe you're writing a book or finalizing a big work presentation, and you notice that the steady drumbeat of your thoughts during that phase are mostly creative thoughts. You're having the same thing for lunch every day because your mind is so focused on what you're doing creatively that you're barely even noticing or making time to plan what you're going to eat for lunch. Right? This is another way we work with the thoughts. It's another way to detach from the importance of thinking, the belief that our thoughts are true. It's like, oh yeah, there goes a worried thought. Okay. It's less of a, I'm worried about ABC and more, I'm noticing my mind is in a really worried place right now. It's thinking a lot of worried thoughts. Interesting. Right? So there's a difference there in how you're identifying with it. All right, so let's continue on. There are a few other qualities that I want to consider with you here while we're having this conversation today. And this is more in how the thoughts come to you, how they pass through your mind. So we've talked about planning, creativity, anxious, worried, stressed thinking, strategic and practical thinking, and playful or joyful thinking, right? Those are all certain qualities of the mind, places you go to let your thoughts meander. Now, I want you to also consider the form those thoughts take. Meaning, do you sometimes think in images? Like, do you scroll through mental snapshots of people, of places, of things in your mind? Do you hold certain pictures in your mind on a regular basis? And relatedly, maybe it's not images, but maybe you think in full audio and video. And it just seems like there's a movie playing on a screen in your mind, replaying whole conversations, right? Whole situations and events, like you've hit the rewind button and are experiencing the whole thing over again in your mind's eye. Do your thoughts sometimes have color to them? Texture? Weight? Like some thoughts feel heavier, right? Or lighter. Sometimes thoughts feel crystal clear. And sometimes thoughts are really muddy or really cloudy. Some thoughts feel smooth and quick, right? They just like zing around your head like little pinballs. And other thoughts are really sticky or slow. Like it's kind of wild how thoughts themselves can have a felt sense to them, you know? This is what I mean. Get curious about the form the thoughts take as they travel by in your mind. It's interesting. Also, some of you think in music, like there's a soundtrack going on up there, or songs that have certain meanings, songs that have certain memories attached to them. So it's like you conjure up whole songs in your mind as you're thinking. Now, I know some of you are like, what? So maybe this is not your jam, but maybe this is relevant to you. Thinking in music, lyrics, melodies, beats, right? These are all different qualities of thinking. And lastly, maybe most obviously, but I just want to remind you, a lot of the ways that people think, at least sometimes, is in full sentences, like run-on paragraphs sometimes, that you think and think and think, and it's like a never-ending commentator up there, that voice in your head just chattering. So again, when exploring qualities of thinking, it's helpful to simply notice all of the forms our thoughts can take. And then what the thoughts are. That's the planning or creativity or all the other things that we talked about earlier, right? All right, so the quality of your thinking, noticing what your thoughts are, sure. Noticing how those thoughts make you feel, how you show up when you believe what you're thinking. But also zooming out and looking at the overarching quality of your thinking. Where does your mind gravitate? How do you think the thoughts you think? What do you notice when you consider days and weeks and even months of your thoughts as a collective? This is work most people aren't willing to do, by the way. It's hard. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes commitment. But when you get truly inquisitive about the quality of your thinking, as well as the content of the thoughts themselves, you're setting yourself up for some serious self-awareness. And it's one of the best gifts we can give ourselves. So, that's it for now. The quality of your thinking. Please, before you go, don't forget to rate and review the show. I'd really appreciate it, and it'll help our other anxious friends get the support they're looking for. And I will see you at the same time, same place next week for more Transforming Anxiety. And until then, please take care. Do you have someone to help you with your stress, anxiety, worry, and overwhelm? If not, I would love to be your coach. The Fierce Calm Project is my virtual coaching program where we get to go in on topics like this one, and I can help you apply these lessons to your life so that you're creating your own transformation. We do live coaching calls, guided meditations, on-demand yoga classes. We hold book club where we read books your neighborhood book club won't, and there's lots of bonus content that I've created just for you. When you're ready to take what you're learning on the podcast to a whole other level, then come on over and check out the Fierce Calm Project at kellyhanlonmccormick.com/Fierce Calm Project.